My name is Shireen, and today I'm going to be talking about the soundscape of Iran. Iran, initially known as Persia, is actually one of the oldest countries in the world and was established around 2,500 years ago. The empire founded by Cyrus the Great was the first Persian empire to rule across three continents. It governed a wide range of different ethnic groups with the foundation of equal rights for all, in which local customs or religions were not interfered with. Despite countless invasions and extreme demolition, the Persian culture remained resilient. Fast forward to 1926 and the beginning of the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Khan, a trained soldier who had risen in the ranks of the Iranian army, was chosen by the British to lead a brigade to Tehran, and he was crowned king soon after. He governed through a military regime where he established a strong central state and grew the economy. His son, Mohammad Reza Shah, continued that governing style when he became the last Shah of Iran in 1941. Throughout his reign, he established policies that were designed to push Iran to modernize and to break the power of religious hierarchy. Though the higher class supported him, the lower and middle classes were desperate for a democratic state. Despite the politics, women were given the right to dress freely, and women's rights, such as the right to vote, to initiate divorce, and to travel without a man's permission, were encouraged by the Shah and his wife. There was progress in education and healthcare that included both men and women, and overall there was a freedom of choice. Again, there were political flaws, but the atmosphere was much more comparable to Western societies then than it is today. So let's talk about society before the revolution. In the Shah's reign, most of the country was middle class, but now the overwhelming majority are lower class and in poverty. Western fashion was very popular and clothing became a sign of wealth, and the sport of soccer was introduced to Iran. Before the revolution, Iran was a hotbed for music mixed with Eastern and Western influence. Mainstream music was becoming popular along with the lifestyle. In general, it was a very vibrant and diverse musical culture that flourished in cities. Perhaps the most famous and loved artist in the 70s was Gugush, who was also called the Madonna of Iran. She performed everywhere, and soon enough, every Iranian woman and singer was trying to be just like her. After the revolution in 1979, a radical Islamic theocracy was established, and all music was banned. Western music, in particular, was said to be satanic and no different than opium. In addition to the banning of all music for about 10 years, female solo vocalists were prohibited from performing and still cannot perform as a solo act today. In recent years, they have been able to get away with singing background vocals or with male accompaniment. In order to get a deeper understanding of what the Iranian people actually believed, I interviewed 4 Iranian American musicians living in the United States. The first musician I interviewed is Bahram Nazardad, who moved to the United States from Iran a few years before the revolution took place. The questions that I asked are listed on the screen. To the first question, he answered that music was a big part of the society in Iran. There were up-and-coming artists. It was always there in celebrations and in get-togethers with my family. My family was pretty musically inclined, so it was a big part of our society at the time. To the next question about what his personal experience with music was, Bahram answered with, "After I came to the United States a few years before the revolution, I didn't understand how bad the impact was. I think the first thing that I noticed was that a lot of Iranian musicians started moving to Los Angeles and hiring us musicians for gigs. They were fleeing Iran because music was banned, and there were no exceptions. This was a huge shock to society." I then asked, how did the use of music change in Iran? His response to this was, "I think music moved away from celebration and joy and has become a business model and source of income for the people who are insiders of the government. I guess it's just a part of this regime." Now there are specific gardens that are designated for weddings, which is one of the only places you can play music officially and openly. Even then, The music has been somewhat approved of by the state. It's nonsense, but what can we do? The next question was, how did the Iranian people's feelings surrounding music change? With which he answered, the traditional music is still very much alive and well, because of the fact that the people refuse to reconcile with it being taken away from them permanently. They fought back as much as they could, and in their own ways, it paid off. I think that when it comes to music, even though it is still not where it used to be, the Iranian people have won. Nowadays, I have noticed that almost everyone plays some sort of music instrument, which wasn't the case when I was growing up. It seems like the movement by the government to suffocate music out of society actually worked in the opposite way. The people just started wanting it more. After talking to Bahram, who is a producer and professional musician himself, I came out with a deep understanding of how the loss of music was felt all around the world. While talking about his experiences in the United States, he emphasized that Iranian music was not present in the US, but after the revolution, the musicians who were fleeing Iran continued playing their music wherever they moved, and passed it down to their children. Because of this, Iranian music can be found all over the world now, not just in Iran. It's become global, which makes it even harder for the Iranian regime to erase it. This has strengthened bonds between Iranians and created a better sense of connection among us. Some examples of this globalization of Iranian music are shown here. In the picture on the left, two artists are shown. Arash, which is on the right, is a Swedish Iranian singer who has made Iranian pop hits that are listened to by Iranian people all over the world. He has helped raise recognition for Iranian music by collaborating with non-Iranian artists such as Snoop Dogg. The picture on the right shows 25 Band. 25 Band is an Iranian duo formed in Mashhad, Iran, and started in the underground music scene. Their music style is a mixture of pop, electro, as well as R&B, jazz, and Persian traditional music. Artists like them are expanding the musical reach of Iranian music and integrating Western influence to create a new genre of Iranian pop. The second musician I interviewed was Kamyar, who moved to the United States a few years ago and was born after the revolution. He lived the majority of his life in Iran and got to experience the aftermath of the revolution firsthand. When asked to describe the musical scene in Iran as he remembered it, he replied, I was born 1 year after the revolution, but in my childhood, everyone was still listening to the music made before the revolution, which we listened to because music at the time was being made by the government. So it was either sad, religious music or war songs. We were so thirsty for music, so we used whatever resources we had, and I may not have liked the style of their music, but I respected and still respect them. It was a little piece of hope in the situation we were in, because the laws were so constricting. When asked what music meant for him, he said, music was like meditation for me. No matter what was happening in the outside world, I would put my headphones on and close my eyes, and the next 4 minutes and 28 seconds of Pink Floyd was mine and mine only. It was a getaway for me. Music was always a big part of our lives. My sister would drive us crazy with pop music she had downloaded. She would play it all the time. I remember without even liking the songs, I could sing every word to them. Throughout the interview, Kamyar emphasizes the strong sense of longing that the Iranian people, especially him, felt for music. He expresses this through one of his personal experiences. He explains that there were websites that illegally shared music, but they kept getting taken down. But when you don't have much, you become creative in finding ways to get something. And music is natural. You can't really stop it from people's lives. The internet made this possible, because before it, music was sneakily passed around with friends or family, so it was more localized. Despite this, we would always find a way to listen to music. I remember we would cover all the walls with egg cartons and thick blankets, so the sound from the house couldn't get out. Everywhere was dark though, so we would listen to music all day and not know if it was dark or light outside. He also expressed how what happened in Iran was and still is very shocking to the non Iranian people that hear about it. Music is something that has always been there, so we take it for granted and therefore have a hard time imagining it being banned. So here is a little snippet of the interview.
I had a pen friend in France,
Mhm.
and we gave each other letters. And once he asked me, "Let's exchange some music between our countries," and I said, "I'm sorry, I can't. I can give you my music. I can mail it out, but you cannot send me anything. It's illegal here." And I remember that he really couldn't understand the answer. He really couldn't get the picture that music might be forbidden in some places. And yeah, he thought that I don't want to be his friend.
Among the musicians I interviewed was Kambiz Gurusi. If you guessed that he's my dad, you are correct. When asked to describe the musical scene before the revolution, he replied, "Before the revolution, my parents were definitely pioneers of westernization in Iran, in both their thinking and behavior. We were always surrounded by music and would attend musical events every Thursday night. My mother's cousin Arif was and still is a legendary Iranian singer, so music ran in our family. Although traditional music was very popular at the time, people were starting to gravitate towards westernized modern Iranian music." His response to the question, "What does music mean to you?" was, "Being around music was a wonderful atmosphere to grow up in. I moved to the United States for boarding school when I was 12 years old, but when I would go back to visit Iran, I would bring albums from American musicians for my friends. Music was the thing that brought my friends and I back together. Listening to it was a way of coping with being away from my family and adjusting to being alone in the United States. Music was seen as a very positive and happy thing when I was growing up, and musicians were role models." I then asked, what were the aftermaths of the revolution related to music? His response was, "Immediately after the revolution, anything that had to do with the West was condemned and was grounds for arrest and execution, including music. I remember that at one point the government was tricking people into giving up the fact that they were musicians. They would arrest people, and then in prison they would tell them that they were having a talent show and to bring their instruments and play at that talent show. The next day, the people who played the instruments or performed were killed." The next question was, how did the changes in the political atmosphere affect the meaning of music? His response, "The Iranian Revolution forever altered Iranian music by forcing a certain ideology into a very culturally diverse society. Music was the soul of so many people, and they were forced to function without that, like machines. It broke families apart because the kids would want to play or listen to music, but the parents wouldn't want them to get hurt, which created divisions. And it broke them even further because they didn't even believe in what they were enforcing in their children, but they were terrified of the consequences. After a while, people became, and still are, restless. However, every time that they peacefully protest, they are met with guns and violence. And even though they want to fight for their rights, who would want to put their lives in danger, die, and leave their family alone? Nobody wants to die, they just want to live better." Speaking with my father helped me realize the depth of the impact of the revolution, specifically the banning of music. He described music as the soul and heart of the Iranian people, which was just ripped away. It represented joy and celebration, and banning music stripped that culture-wide joy away. Music was something that brought the different cultures across Iran together and was a language in itself. It was more than just another right taken away from the new regime. So why is this topic even important? Well, when I began this whole thing, I wanted to come out of it with a better understanding of the true effects of the revolution on the Iranian people, specifically when it comes to music. I wanted people to hear the Iranian people's true voices and be able to express their feelings without judgment. I wanted to know how much the lifestyles of Iranian people changed due to the restrictions of music, and to focus on the feelings that were created around the topic. Music became a form of rebellion and a sign to the government that the Iranian people were never going to give up their culture and heritage. The robbery of music in Iran shows the consequences of having an authoritarian government. That taking away the things dear to people by force, especially something that is so natural and buried in being human, just makes us long for it more. An idea that popped up multiple times throughout the interviews was that the suffocation of music by the government backfired and made the Iranian people crave music more than ever. More people started picking up instruments and getting involved in the deeper knowledge of music theory and development as compensation for not being able to dance and sing openly. This placed a greater sense of respect and value on music and ensured that people don't take it for granted again. Thank you so much for listening. Motshekirem.